As early as the 15th century, China and the Philippines established close ties through the Maritime Silk Road. During this time, a large goodwill mission led by Sulu King from what is now the southern Philippines plowed through the Pacific Ocean to China and paid tribute to the emperor of the Ming Dynasty. More than 600 years have passed. The economic and trade ties, as well as cultural exchanges between the two countries, have never been cut off. Today, we're going to trace along this earliest voyage route for economic cooperation, explore the shared cultural memories, and figure out how does Maritime Silk Road carry the memories of the two countries through generations. How does it feel to be an inheritor of those precious memories? To shed light on this remarkable story spanning 6 centuries, I'm pleased to be joined here in the studio by Princess Jacel Kiram, the descendant of Sulu King and the co-founder and president of the International Center for Peace, Reconciliation and Development, or ICPRD. Princess Kiram, welcome to The Point.
Thank you for having me here. First of all, I'd like to greet everyone. Greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you. First of all, let's talk about your trip, because September the 13th is the anniversary of the passing away of the Sulu King in 1417. So that's 606 years later. It's a story that's not known to many people. How did it all started?
Well, the story of Sultan Batara and Emperor Yongle started 104 years before the Spaniards named us Philippines. In our history books, we were discovered in 1521. But this story...
Discovered?
Yeah, discovered in 1521. But this story of Sultan Batara, the tomb in Dejo, is a testament that Sulu was once a great nation, and that the so-called discovery, and that when we were discovered, they were saying that we were savages. We had nothing. The tomb of Sultan Batara, his visit here to Emperor Yongle, is a testament that we had a government, we had diplomatic relations, and that we can navigate from Sulu all the way to China.
In those days?
In those days, when technology is not yet as high-tech as what we have now.
So let's give people a geographical idea of exactly what we're talking about, right? Southern Sulu is in southern Philippines,
yes,
in the Mindanao area, and it is thousands of miles, I would say, if you go by sea.
We reenacted the voyage,
yes,
in 2018. Mm-hmm. So they made the boat like the ones that was used by Sultan Batara in 1417, and they took them how many days? Like 3 days via boat. I'm not sure, 3 or 5 days from Manila port all the way to Xiamen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then from Xiamen they had to go. Xiamen is in the southern China seaboard, and
it's nearer the Philippines, I think.
Yeah, it's close.
But the reenactment they just stop in that port of Xiamen. But in the olden days, Sultan Batara brought with him 300 people, and they visited Emperor Yongle. It was a very brave, long travel. He braved the seas.
So the two countries known each other. My understanding was that the great navigator from the Ming Dynasty by the name of Zheng He, he actually led 6-7 voyages to East Asia, Southeast Asia, Southern Asia, all the way to East Africa. And along the way, he visited 30-some countries, including Sulu. And then the Sultanate of Sulu established a relationship with the Ming Dynasty, and then they sent this delegation of 300 people, as you mentioned, to visit the Ming Dynasty emperor. Is that a visit in return?
Yes, because during that time there was trading already, and there were Chinese traders in Sulu. Cheng Ho is known up to now by the old people of Sulu. It's just that we have no written accounts about Cheng Ho. It's all oral. The history of the Tausug people are all oral history, transferred to every generation to generations. But during that time, according to the old people of Sulu, the Sultan of Sulu decreed that they have to protect the traders. So Chinese traders are being protected during that time because the edict was if one Chinese will be harmed, 10 Tausug heads will roll. That's an exaggeration of how the Sultan wants to protect the traders, because trading is important. It helps their economy. So through that, he was able to, maybe messages came all the way. I don't know what happened, but maybe messages, it reached the emperor, how the Sultan protects the Chinese while trading in Sulu. Maybe they received an invitation. That's why they went to China and bringing gifts to the emperor. But unfortunately, when he went home, passing through the Shandong River,
Passing the Shandong province in eastern China in Dezhou City.
yes, in Dezhou City, he was ill before they passed through that area. But on that area, he died. He passed away. And when the emperor learned that, he gave Sultan Batara an emperor-like burial. So the two sons of Sultan Batara decided to protect and take care of the tomb, and they decided to be in China to protect the tomb. The emperor gave them everything they need for them to establish a community in Dezhou. And the story was told to me by the head of Beng village. He's a Ma, the last name is Ma, and the Ma, according to him, was tasked by the emperor to take care of the needs of the descendants who decided to stay in China, in Dezhou.
You know, this story gave me goosebumps when I hear it. First of all, that we actually didn't know about this history, that there was this mausoleum of a foreign king in China. Actually, I found out that this is one of very few. Some say there are only 2 such cases. So this is a very special place. And then this was 600 years ago, and the tomb is very well preserved, I understand. What is your observation when you visit the tomb, not just of the deceased king, Sultan, but also of his wife, who stayed in China, and his 2 descendants? What is the condition of that mausoleum?
The mausoleum? The mausoleum is still intact. We went there
600 years later.
Yes, 606 years later to be exact. We were just there September 13, 2 days ago. And we had a meeting with the An and the Wen family, the descendants, my relatives in China. And they said there were some challenging stages in the preservation of the tomb, because in 1960s, I think, the old An said the generation before them really took care of the tomb. They bravely guarded the tomb because there was a time when there was chaos in China, and that relics or proof of history is being destroyed.
Yeah.
So they took turns to guard the tomb. And I told them, with that story, that bravery shows that you really have a Tausug blood. Because Tausugs, or the Sulu people, are known to be very brave people.
So you talk about this people who are surnamed An and people who are surnamed Wen. I understand that these are the descendants of the 2 sons of the deceased sultan, who stayed behind to look after the tomb, and they married, obviously, they mingled with the local people. So you actually have relatives here on the Chinese mainland. How numbered are they? How many are they? Do you know?
Well, they said they are numbering to 3,000, more or less, Chinese descendants of Sultan Batara. And what's funny is that I do not understand them, but I feel so at home in Dejo. And just this morning, we visited the An in their community in Changying. Changying, I don't know if I pronounced that right,
Yeah.
but we just visited them this morning, and as if we have known each other for such a long time. But as a matter of fact, I've just seen them twice during 2017 and my today's visit.
It's blood connection.
I think so, because I was really so comfortable. The oldest Anne is a woman, and she looks like my mother-in-law. And the height is just like my mother-in-law's. So I told my husband, your relatives here are looking for you.
How about the way of life? I mean, the bloodline is obviously there, but look, you believe in Islam, and those descendants, how do they live? Are they able to keep the Muslim tradition, live a Muslim life?
Surprisingly, yes. And they speak Arabic, and they know the prayers, because in the tomb we did some praying for the dead, and a lot of them are Muslims. So they live in a district where 80% in that housing area are Muslims. And they said that their government really protected them.
What does it mean for you to come and pursue this history and to let more people raise awareness about this history? This is not your first visit to the tomb, to the mausoleum. You were here in 2017 for the first time when that was the 600th anniversary. What makes you so passionate about this piece of history?
This actually promotes unity. This actually promotes people-to-people exchanges between Sulu, now Philippines for that matter, Philippines and China. The story of Sultan Batara and Emperor Yongle is about friendship that started 1417. So it's a long history that we Philippines and China share together. And this story brings pride to every Tausug or Sulu people. But not just only to the Sulu people, it brings pride to every Filipino people, knowing that in 1521, when we were discovered, it's not true that we came from nothing, because we had a government in the form of the Sultanate of Sulu that was graciously received as an equal by the emperor during the Ming Dynasty.
So your history was not defined by the colonizers when you were discovered by them. Yeah. So how do you plan to tell this story? I understand you plan to maybe write children's books,
Yes.
or how do you plan to let more people understand this?
A lot of people from the Philippines have been to the tomb already, and everybody who knew the story had a goosebump, and somehow felt a sense of pride in the story of Sultan Batara. But I think the most that would benefit from this story are our next generation. So we have to let them know that this is their story also, that they came from they had a glorious past, and that they had a leader in the past that gave importance already to international relations, to diplomatic relations, and so that they will continue that friendship, that bond that was established in 1417. I think if you tell this story to children about the story of kings, princesses, emperors, they will always remember that. And it will give them sense of pride as young as they are, knowing that they came from these roots.
We have to be honest, it is a tricky period of time for relationship between China and the Philippines, for obvious reasons we all know. But you took the bold step, you took the brave step to not only advocate for better relations with China. You're here, you're on the national television of China, you embrace your relatives in Shandong. Why do you want to do that? What is your belief when countries' relations are complicated? What can you do as a princess?
You know, politics is temporary. What's important is the relationship that is established by people. So this is a people-to-people relationship. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want the Filipino people to find pride in this story. Because this story tells about the glorious past of the Filipino people.
What impact will it have for knowing this story for the ordinary Philippines, for the people in Sulu, for instance? What specific impact do you think it's going to bring them? Because right now people are very much focused on economics, on livelihood.
Well, this also can open economic cooperation because you will not be business partners if you do not trust each other. This story will establish trust in relationship, in relating with Chinese people relating to Filipino people, because they have bond that started 606 years ago.
Right now, what do you think is missing, and how do you do to bridge this understanding gap? Do you think there is a trust gap, an understanding gap among the people?
Well, I think with the ordinary people, there's no problem. It's just in the higher ups, but it's not my problem. I mean, I just want to retell this part of history. This is to correct also historical injustices done to the Mindanao people, the Sulu people. Because when you speak of Sulu, the only thing that people knows is that there are rebel groups in that area, that the area is not safe. But when you come to think of it, this story doesn't only tell how advanced Sulu was in 1417. This also tells about the character of the Tausug people, that we are friendly people and we're kind people and brave to brave the seas all the way to China. So it may be uphill, but I find hope in children. I want them to know this story, and it will be their story, and it's going to be for their future. So it's up to them how to strengthen the bond between two countries.
Yeah. You also had other itinerary on your visits here. It's quite an extensive visit. What has been your takeaway, having traveled China in different places? You took the high-speed railway. What is not known? Yeah, what is not known in the Philippines that you want to highlight here?
Actually, I'm just going to talk about my experience. The first time I was invited to China, I was thinking, we have Chinatown in the Philippines.
Yeah.
But it's a small, messy, and so crowded place. So in the plane, I was thinking, I was expecting that it's going to be a very big, like a Chinatown in the Philippines.
When was this?
In 2017 of April.
Oh, 2000. So that was your first trip?
Yes.
Wow.
April. But when I went to China, when I landed in Shanghai, it was magnificent. It's as if I've been to Europe, I've been to the US. It's equal. And Shanghai, according to them, is like Paris. It is. It's a city full of lights. And then in May of 2017, I was able to visit Beijing. It's different. It's a beautiful country.
It's different from what you expected, what you were reading about.
This is a beautiful country. And people here, even if you do not understand them, they're kind people. They're very hospitable. And they're very gracious hosts. I don't understand Chinese, Mandarin. I'm learning to. But until now, I can't speak and can't understand. But the language of the body, the smile, I feel so welcome and very comfortable.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. I'm really happy to hear that. Did you also have the opportunity to veer off the beaten track, you know, the big cities, but also go to less travel or maybe less developed areas and get a more multi-dimensional understanding of the country? For instance, in Shandong, in the villages.
Yes, I've been to Shandong. My first visit here, I landed in Shanghai. We went to Shandong and visit Dezhou City, and Dezhou City in 2017 is not this developed yet, but I was so surprised when we visited just 2 days ago. It was so developed, and it was a beautiful city.
Changed a lot.
Yes, changed a lot in just a few years, 6 years to be exact. And the people who were with me, 3 of them are first timers also in China. So just like me, they expected the opposite and were surprised and were happy to experience China.
So what do you think needs to be done? I mean, obviously, the China that you've experienced is very different from the China that is thought to be, you know, out in the Philippines. What do you think can be done to help more people understand?
Well, I think more trips to China. We invite more guests here, or the people who have been here will, of course, retell what they have experienced in China. And, you know, Filipinos and Chinese are same in matters like in treating families, treating elders, because we have high respect to elders. It's our elders who always decides. I hope that will continue, because nowadays a lot of our youngs are influenced by the media and wanting their freedom when you know, parents must decide for their children. That's the belief in the olden times in the Philippines. But according to one friend of ours, he's very successful, and he said that here in China, 2 generations are your responsibility. 2 generations after you are your responsibility. So you shape their future.
You think that is shared, that is very similar to...
Yes, that's very similar, because the very conservative Filipinos does that. We decide for children, and I think I'm guilty of that. I want to decide for my own children, because when I was during those age, I don't know what to do. So if you just let them, they might end up, you know, choosing the wrong one. But they said, let them learn from their mistakes.
So this is very interesting. So does that show that we actually have very similar culture and very similar values, being, I don't know, Asians, that we value family,
yes,
we value unity.
The family, love for food, very gracious host, very warm welcome, the giving of gifts. We do that all the time. Like we call that pasalubong. When you arrive from somewhere else, from a trip, you bring pasalubong. That's a gift, a present.
The Chinese too.
Chinese do that.
We have a lot of things that we share. We have a lot of things we share. And I do feel, I don't know, the story that tells me is it's a friendly relationship that China had in history with its southeastern neighbors. Instead of the kind of, oh, I'm the center of the world and, you know, you are all kind of smaller than I am. That's what the story told me. The emperor of the Ming Dynasty treated the countries in Southeast Asia with respect.
Yes,
That's what I took away from it.
I see that in the story of Batara, Sultan Batara and Emperor Yongle. This story is this is not much about China actually, because this story rooted from Sulu. The descendants here are the descendants' roots here are from Sulu, from the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
China adopted them. They're just adopted sons and daughters of China, but they took care of them. and this is written in their Chinese in China history.
Yeah.
And it is not in the Philippines, unfortunately. But hopefully, it's not yet the end of time. I learned this when I was doing my thesis in college.
Princess Kiram, you served as Deputy Chief of Mission for Team Philippines at the previous Asian Games in Indonesia. Now, the 19th Asian Games is being held in Hangzhou, China. What are your expectations this time?
Well, I expect, of course, that the athletes from the Philippines will contribute to the medal tally of the Philippines. And that, I always tell this to my athletes that winning medals must not be their main objective. Well, it's an icing to the cake if you do really train hard. But what's important in participating in regional games is to establish friendship with people, because sports can promote diplomacy, diplomatic relations among countries, and what's important is always the people-to-people relationship.
And you're also the president of the Silat Sports Association.
Yes, it's a Malay martial arts. It originated from Indonesia.
Okay. Will the Filipino team be participating?
Oh, unfortunately, no. We're not part of this Asian Games because there's politics also in sports. But in the previous Asian Games, we were part, and we just had the SEA Games. We participated in the Southeast Asian Games.
Okay. Well, I would love to learn more about Filipino martial arts. There appears to be many different kinds. Indeed, the region is very diverse in terms of culture and sports.
Yeah, Pencak is actually the combination of all martial arts. So you see kickboxing, boxing, karate in Pencak, and it's similar to, all martial arts are somehow similar because they have forms and combat. There are two categories, the forms and combat. In forms, all the techniques are shown, but with grace and balance.
Well, I hope to be able to witness this fantastic sport myself one day. What is the Chinese community in Philippines like? In Sulu, for instance, how big are they? How important is their role in society?
Well, in Sulu, there's no like Chinese community, but there are a lot of Tausug people, Sulu people who has Chinese surnames. Even our governor, the father of Sulu's last name is Chinese. It's Tan.
How come? How does that come from?
Well, maybe because in the olden times, there's trading really between China and Sulu.
Okay.
And they fell in love with each other.
like the descendants of Sulu integrated here. The Chinese integrated in Sulu.
Yes.
It's a lovely story of
and in Sulu there's also a Chinese cemetery.
Yes. So Chinese found their roots there. They took roots in that piece of land.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And my guest has been Princess Jacel Kiram, the descendant of Sulu king and the co-founder and president of the International Center for Peace, Reconciliation and Development. And with that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Li Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Li Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got The Point.